HOA Karen demanded my Corvette keys, claimed it was hers. Got arrested on the spot. Why would a woman you've never met suddenly demand the keys to your car and claim it's hers? It was a peaceful Sunday morning in my quiet neighborhood in Irvine, California. The kind of morning where the birds seem to harmonize and the air feels like a clean slate. I just finished polishing my pride and joy-me-late father's 1969 Corvette Stingray. It was the last thing he left me before he passed from pancreatic cancer, and I treated that car like a sacred heirloom. As I was drying off the hood, a voice I didn't recognize shattered the calm. "That car doesn't belong to you. I know it's mine." I turned, confused. Standing at the end of my driveway was a woman in her early 50s, wearing oversized sunglasses and a bright floral blouse that screamed, HOA Treasurer. She had that clipped, entitled tone that immediately sets off alarm bells. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" I asked cautiously. "You don't need to. I'm with the HOA. That car is not allowed here. It violates our covenant. And besides, I had a Corvette just like that in the 80s. That must be it. Someone must have stolen it from me. Hand over the keys." I almost laughed, thought it was a prank. But her face didn't flinch. "You're serious?" Her lips curled into a sneer. "Dead serious. I'll call the police if you don't comply." That's when I noticed the folder she clutched. Inside were random printed pages and blurry photos, none of which had anything to do with my car. But she was convinced, or pretending to be. At that moment, my neighbor Claudia, retired DMV worker who knew everything about every car on our street, peeked out from behind her fence. "That's his car, Karen. He's had it for years. His father drove that car in the parades." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, Claudia. You've always taken his side." She stormed up the driveway, now only inches from me. "If you don't give me those keys, I'll have this car towed. I know people. This is my community." I took a deep breath. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want drama. But Karen wasn't interested in reason. She grabbed a flower pot from my porch and smashed it on the Corvette's hood, screaming, "There! Now it's not worth anything to you, is it?" The sound was sickening. Ceramic shards flew. Soil splattered across the glossy red paint. A deep scratch bled across the hood like an open wound. I was frozen. Then I pulled out my phone and started recording. Karen froze. "You're filming me?" "Yeah," I said, my voice trembling. "Because you're insane." She lunged at me to snatch the phone, but I stepped back. Claudia, bless her soul, was already on the phone with the police. That's when the twist came. From across the street, Mr. Deninga Quiet, retired Air Force colonel and the vice president of the HOA, walked up with his iPad in hand. "I just pulled the HOA vehicle registry and all archived correspondence," he said calmly. "We have no record of a Corvette ever being registered under your name, Karen. And you're not allowed to harass other homeowners like this." Karen's face turned sheet white. "And we installed a new security camera last week, just across the road. It's been recording everything." 2 officers arrived just as he finished. They didn't waste time. Karen tried to play the victim. "He stole my car. I'm just taking back what's mine." But the cops already had Claudia's statement, Denning's digital proof, and my video. When they handcuffed her, she shrieked like it was a personal insult. "You'll regret this. I run this neighborhood," she cried. One of the cops muttered, "Not anymore, you don't." They placed her in the cruiser as neighbors began to gather. Phones were out. Whispers spread like wildfire. But it didn't end there. As the patrol car pulled away, taking Karen down the street with sirens off, but her voice still echoing through the neighborhood, I stood there in a surreal silence. It was like the air had thickened with disbelief. People began to emerge slowly from their homesome filming, some whispering, a few shaking their heads as if they weren't surprised at all. Claudia walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, kid?" I nodded slowly. "I think so, but the hood, look at it." The Corvette's glossy red surface now bore a deep gouge, with streaks of soil and crushed ceramics scattered around like confetti from a bad joke. I crouched down, gently running my fingers along the scratch. I knew it was just a car, but it wasn't just a car. It was my father's. "She'll pay for that," Claudia said firmly, as if reading my mind. "We'll make sure of it." And she meant it. Because within hours, Claudia and Mr. Denning weren't just witnesses, they became allies. While I filed a police report and handed over my video, Denning compiled all the HOA communications Karen had sent in the past 6 months. Turns out, she'd been abusing her position, intimidating new residents, imposing bogus fines, and even altering documents. That's when the first twist came. Denning returned later that afternoon, visibly shaken. He held up a document. "Did you know Karen forged a notice about your vehicle last week? She submitted a fabricated complaint to the HOA board, claiming your Corvette was an abandoned relic violating aesthetic standards." I blinked. She tried to legally justify stealing it? She was building a paper trail. If you hadn't filmed her, she might have gotten away with it. Denning wasn't the only one furious. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that evening. And for once, the normally indifferent neighbors showed up. Nearly 30 people packed into the community clubhouse. Some had been targeted by Karen's manipulations before, others were just shocked she went as far as trying to take someone's car. When I stepped up to speak, I didn't go in angry. I told them about the Corvette, about what it meant to my dad and to me, how I'd spent years saving to restore it. I showed the video not to embarrass her, but to show just how far unchecked power could go. Then something even more unexpected happened. From the back of the room, a woman raised her hand. She was in her late 40s with a quiet presence. "My name is Lacey," she said. "I used to work with Karen years ago at a mortgage office in Tustin. She got fired for, well, something similar. She tried to claim another woman's car was hers after a mix-up in the company parking lot. I didn't speak up then because I was scared. But I see now I should have." The room went silent. Then murmurs began again. This wasn't a one-time outburst. It was a pattern. As the board officially suspended Karen from all HOA activity pending further investigation, I stepped outside and breathed in the warm night air. It had all escalated so fast. But the worst part wasn't the scratch or the threats, it was how believable she'd made it all seem. How she weaponized authority and delusion in equal measure. The next morning, I woke up to even more fallout. Karen's mugshot was circulating on the local Facebook neighborhood group. Someone leaked it with the caption, "This woman tried to steal a Corvette and called the cops on herself." Within hours, former neighbors from her previous communities were commenting. "She did this to us too," filed fake noise complaints. "Same Karen who called animal control on my therapy dog. Told me my wheelchair ramp lowered the value of the neighborhood." It was like the whole facade was crumbling. But the legal consequences were no joke either. The police confirmed she'd be charged with attempted grand theft auto, vandalism over $400, felony level, due to the car's value, filing a false report. And once the HOA board's investigation wrapped up, a civil suit was coming to for abuse of authority and forgery. Later that week, I got a letter, not from Karen but from her daughter. It was handwritten, full of shame, apologies, and the kind of rawness you can't fake. "I'm so sorry," it read. "I don't know what happened to her. She wasn't always like this. My brother and I have been trying to get her to see someone. I'm embarrassed and hurt, but mostly, I'm glad you stood your ground. I hope this letter means something." It did. Because sometimes the people who hurt us most aren't just filthily broken. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain part of it. Still, accountability matters, and I wasn't about to let this slide. By the end of the month, the HOA had fully expelled Karen. Her house was quietly listed for sale, and she was facing a court date for her charges. I had the Corvette repaired, the scratch buffed out, new ceramic coating, but the memory of that day stayed with me. Karen's court date was set 3 weeks after the incident, and in that short window of time, our neighborhood underwent a kind of transformation. The fear people once had of her had melted into collective resolve. For the first time in years, HOA meetings were full. People finally felt like they could speak freely without being bullied, fined, or shamed. Meanwhile, Karen's life was visibly unraveling. Her once pristine yard, the one she obsessed over to shame others, began to wilt. She stopped tending it, No more passive-aggressive notes taped to trash cans. No more obsessive patrolling. It was like the whole world had turned against her, and in some ways it had. The local news picked up the story. I still remember the headline: HOA board member arrested for attempted car theft, claims classic Corvette was rightfully hers. It aired that night at 6 p.m. Footage of her screaming and pulling at my Corvette door played as the anchor narrated the absurdity. It would have been funny if it weren't so disturbing. A few days later, I was subpoenaed as a key witness. Claudia and Mr. Denning were also asked to testify. The court case wasn't just about the car, Anna Maria. It was about intent, manipulation, and a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for years. When the trial began, Karen walked into the courtroom wearing a gray pantsuit and a fake calmness she clearly didn't feel. She refused to make eye contact with anyone. Her lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, citing an emotional breakdown due to community stress. But the judge wasn't having it. The prosecution laid everything bare. My video footage, played in full. Claudia's eyewitness testimony, clear, precise. HOA evidence from Mr. Denning, airtight. And then came the surprise witness. Remember Lacey, the woman who once worked with Karen? She showed up, this time under oath. She testified that, years ago, Karen had tried to file an insurance claim for a missing car she claimed was stolen from her office parking lot. The police had dropped the case due to lack of evidence. But the similarities were eerie. Karen's defense crumbled after that. Worse still for her, anyway, was the second twist. During the HOA's investigation, it was discovered that Karen had been charging unauthorized fees to certain homeowners, specifically targeting renters and minorities. She would issue fake citations and pocket the money, always in cash or personal checks. The judge ordered a separate civil case to investigate the HOA violations. But in this case, the verdict was swift. Guilty on all three charges: attempted grand theft auto, criminal mischief, vandalism, filing a false police report. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Until then, Karen was released, but under strict conditions. She was to stay at least 300 feet away from me, and she was banned from attending any HOA or neighborhood meetings. Her house was egged within 48 hours of the trial's conclusion, not by me or anyone I knew, but it didn't surprise me. Then came the sentencing day. Karen stood before the judge in the same gray suit, her face pale and gaunt. Gone was the bluster. Gone was the arrogance. This time, when she spoke, her voice was small. I made a mistake. I was under a lot of pressure. I never meant to hurt anyone, she said. Her voice cracked as she added, I lost my husband last year. I guess I lost my mind, too. The courtroom was quiet. I didn't feel sorry for her. But I did feel something. Maybe pity. Maybe just exhaustion. Some part of me hoped she would say she was truly sorry, that she recognized the damage she caused. But the judge responded with a tone as cold as truth itself. Mistake implies a moment of confusion, Mrs. Tran, but what you did was deliberate, planned. You weaponized your authority, manipulated your position, and violated the peace and trust of your own neighbors. Then he delivered the sentence. 18 months probation, 60 days of community service, mandatory restitution for the damages to my vehicle, and a $5,000 fine to be paid to the HOA Legal Relief Fund. Karen didn't look up. She nodded numbly and shuffled out of the courtroom like someone who'd been deflated from the inside out. But the final blow wasn't legal, it was social. The HOA formally voted to ban her from holding any future position in the neighborhood. Stores she used to frequent whispered about her. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Parents pulled their kids away when she walked by. The pedestal she once stood on, made of intimidation, petty rules, and false authority, had completely crumbled beneath her. And then she left. 3 weeks later, her house was sold quietly to a young couple with 2 kids. They moved in with warm smiles and fresh energy. A new beginning for them and for us. As for me, I still drive my Corvette every Sunday morning. The hood's been fully restored, though I asked the body shop to leave one faint, almost invisible mark underneath the clear coat. Just a reminder, not of pain, but of resilience. Was justice served in this case, or should Karen have received a harsher sentence? Can redemption ever follow such a deliberate betrayal of trust, or is some damage just too deep to undo? Share your thoughts below. Months passed. Summer faded into fall, and the air in the neighborhood seemed lighter somehow. It was as if a quiet weight had been lifted, one that none of us fully noticed until it was gone. No more surprise citations stuck to mailboxes. No more whispered threats disguised as HOA reminders. No more Karen. Her house sat empty for a while after she left, like a ghost of who she used to be. Some kids even dared each other to knock on the front door at night, telling stories about the crazy Corvette lady who used to live there. It became something of a local legend. But time did what it always does, it moved on. New families moved in. Laughter returned to the sidewalks. The HOA, now under a new, balanced leadership, began focusing on what it was actually meant for: helping the community thrive, not choke. For me, though, the wound took longer to heal. Every time I slid into the Corvette, I still remembered the sound of that flower pot cracking against the hood. That moment when someone tried to erase my connection to something sacred just because she felt entitled to it. One afternoon in December, I found myself parked near a coffee shop a few towns over. I'd just come from visiting my father's grave, a ritual I kept every month. I was sipping my drink, minding my own business, when I saw her, Karen. She was sitting alone at a corner table inside. No makeup, hair loosely tied. She looked thinner, older, like someone who had been running from shadows for a long time and just sat down for the first time. She didn't notice me. I didn't go in. I just watched from the window for a moment, surprised at how I didn't feel anger anymore. No heat, no tightness in my chest. Just something closer to closure. I started to walk away. But then the door opened behind me, and her voice called out softly, "Wait." I turned. Karen stood at the door, arms crossed, uncertain. "You're the guy with the car." I nodded. "Yeah, I am." There was an awkward silence. A few people passed by, oblivious to the strange tension between us. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much now, but I wasn't well. I still might not be. I just wanted control over something. Anything. And I hurt you in the process." I didn't answer right away. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not a villain, but a broken mirror. Still sharp in places. Still capable of cutting. But cracked and human. "I don't need your apology," I said quietly. "But maybe you do." Her eyes welled up. She nodded once, as if that permission meant more than she expected. And then she turned and went back inside. That was the last time I saw her. Back in the neighborhood, things flourished. The HOA began organizing real community events, family movie nights, charity drives, even an annual classic car showcase. And guess what? They asked me to help run it. At first, I hesitated. But Claudia nudged me. "You've seen the worst of this community. That's exactly why you should help shape the best of it." So I did. And in doing so, I learned something I never expected to. Sometimes the most painful conflicts are what wake a community up. Karen thought she was the voice of order, but her downfall reminded everyone what real leadership looks like. Kindness, accountability, respect. The Corvette still shines. I drive it with pride, not just because it's a car my father loved, but because it represents something that survived injustice and came out stronger. I had it repainted one final time, deep crimson with a custom coat. And on the dashboard, hidden beneath the glove box, there's a small engraved plate I had made just for myself. "Legacy can't be stolen, only forgotten."